Kids Talking is sponsored by M&D Properties at Compass. Let this nationally award-winning real estate team help expertly guide you with all of your real estate needs.
Hello, everybody out there in the interwebs. We are here at Kids Talking, and we're ready. We have an awesome show for you guys today. We're digging deep into hookup culture. I think this is another one of those unfiltered, uncensored conversations that you're definitely going to want to hear. And we look forward to hearing your comments. So please drop us a line in the chat. Let us know what you think. We'd happy to address that with the panelists. The kids are ready. We have 3 returning veteran panelists coming to you. So you guys are going to see some familiar faces. And let's get this thing rolling. So we'll see you soon.
All teenagers are going through really similar things right now because everything's crazy.
Well, if you made it this far, then you're ready to hear some kids talking. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, family therapist, expert on communications and relationships, really awesome guy, art collector, author of 9 books, Dr. Don. Don, how you doing today?
Your introductions just get better.
Well, you keep getting better with age every year, so I have to keep improving those intros.
You're doing a great job, Mike. I'm excited to be here once again on Thursday night. And we have some familiar faces tonight, actually. We have some people that our audience knows, and if they don't know them, tonight's the night to meet them because they're wonderful. They've been with us all season, and they've come back on a couple of shows, and they all wanted to be on this show. So here we go.
Okay, so here we go. We've got Chris, Eunice, and Whitley joining us again. Welcome back, guys and gals, ladies, gentlemen.
Hey.
Well, there they are. 3 people that I've gotten to know this season, this summer, you made my summer better. So Chris looks rested. He went to Block Island for a week, and this is Chris's idea. So Chris, this is your show tonight. Hookup culture. We're always thinking about what the next show should be, and we always get the kids involved to give us some of their ideas about what would be good shows to have on. And so I think, Chris, you're the person to start with. What is hookup culture?
Yeah, I think we started to segment into this conversation a couple shows ago. So it's a pretty detailed conversation. So I figured it would be probably pretty beneficial to have a whole segment on it. Basically, it's something that changes throughout generations, throughout time, but it's basically how our society kind of handles the idea of casual sex and hooking up.
Yeah, casual sex is something we all think about and talk about. And how about you? Have you hooked up? Did you do a lot? I mean, now we know, for those of people who watched the show before, you have a relationship now. Was there a lot of hooking up in your life before you found your love?
Somewhat. There were definitely periods that I would go through. That you would just kind of feel around.
No pun intended, right? A little humor is always good. How about you, Whitley? What is hookup culture to you?
Well, I think Chris explains it pretty well. It's just like, I don't know, just kind of like you said, casual sex just without any real like emotional attachment or like commitment, I guess.
So, in that little small town of yours in North Carolina, is that happening?
Yes, it's
It is
pretty
happening.
prevalent, I'd say.
It is,
But I mean, I think that's more everywhere. It's not just in my small town.
really. So, this friends with benefits, is that kind of part of hookup culture to have friends with benefits?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it because I mean, it has a label, but really, even though sometimes it actually is friends with benefits, like you're actually friends, but then sometimes it'd be more appropriate to really call it just like casual acquaintances with benefits because sometimes even that is like the friends part is like too emotional for some people. Even if though it's referred to as friends with benefits, they aren't really friends. They just like hook up.
So, what drives hookup? Is it oxytocin? Is it the body? Is it the mind? I mean, what's driving a teenager to do this?
I'm sure a lot of it's hormones, but also even though it's not emotional, it's still a type of a connection with someone. So, and I mean, it's just fun too, I guess. It's even though it's becoming more normalized in our society, it's also seen as a thing like for some people, they're like, oh, you shouldn't do that. And since we're young, that makes us want to do it more. Like,
Oh.
it's just,
How about
yeah.
you? Have you done that?
Um,
I've never talked to you about this in our shows. This is my first opportunity to delve into that part
Yeah.
of your life.
No, not really. I
No?
mean, it's just not something that I've experienced at this point in my life.
So but you don't judge it, obviously, and
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
some of your friends are doing it, and
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really just personal preference. It's
you
what
just
you
don't feel
find better.
you don't feel the need or desire to do that.
No, I get too emotionally involved in things for that to work for me.
And that makes sense, knowing you the way I know you. So for you,
Yeah.
that's not going to work.
No, I don't think, not where I'm at now. Maybe in the future, but not now.
Well, you haven't gotten to college yet. We'll see what happens. We'll get you back here when you go to college, right?
Oh, yeah.
All
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And Eunice, welcome back.
Thank you.
So you bring always a different dimension because that LGBTQ world of yours and being pansexual, you always can bring us a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so, what is hookup culture to you?
Hookup culture to me is, I would agree with both Chris and Whitley of it just being casual, no commitments, definitely revolves more around the physical need rather than an emotional need.
How does that work for you? Have you had that in your life? That kind of relationship?
Yes, I have a couple times, but I don't do it anymore because it's not great.
Well,
It's
it's not great because you maybe you get involved and then somebody gets hurt and you have regrets about it, or what is that?
it's more so being an Asian woman. A lot of men who want to hook up with me fetishize me, or they're um, just being a woman in general. You never really know what the man's intentions are, and even if you are there for sex, there are some things you still don't want to do, but some people will still cross that line, especially when it comes to women, in my opinion. So yeah,
What, did you say fetish? What was the word that men like?
fetishize.
Uh,
Yes.
Say more about that.
Oh yeah. So personally, I've had some experiences where people I would have hooked up with were after me because they fetishize Asian women, and basically that means they glorify Asian woman traits just because they're Asian.
Wow.
And it is more than just a preference for Asian women because it becomes very predatory, very violent, very abusive. Yeah.
And what is it about Asian women that makes men feel that?
I could not tell you. I don't know.
Wow, that's really interesting. I would have never known that.
I didn't realize that was a negative thing.
Yeah, so that's a negative thing.
For sure, yeah.
Wow. So have you been hurt or had regrets about it, or when you've had these relationships? How did they start? How do they end?
Yeah, honestly, it's ended as quick as it started. You meet them, you realize what are they doing, and then you leave. Some people can't leave right away, which is what happens, which is what leads to some rape allegations and situations. Yeah.
How come they can't leave, by the way? What would make them not feel that they can leave?
I would say just fear. They're scared that if they do leave, the person will try to threaten them or hurt them, especially if you're meeting that person at their place, not your place, or if you're meeting them somewhere that is really secluded. So, yeah.
So do you think it's a dangerous territory, this casual sex and this hookup culture? Do you think it's dangerous
Yeah.
and detrimental?
Honestly, there are very healthy ways to go around it,
Hmm.
but when it comes to teenage hookup culture, it is very I would say it is quite dangerous because, well, number one, we already lack a lot of sex education in our schools, and number two, there are a lot of predatory men who are not teenagers but will pretend that they are, or they will say that they're not teenagers, but they say, "Oh, you're so mature for your age," to a teenage girl, and the teenage girl will fall for it, and it'll just lead to like really bad negative things.
Chris, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty dangerous when we talk about hookup culture in teenagers, because you have the kind of societal pressure that teenagers feel that they need to hook up to kind of seek validation, and you have that combined with just poor decision making that high schoolers have and even younger, and it can lead to a lot of dangerous situations when people are just meeting up with strangers they met on the internet or just trying to form purely sexual connections without really knowing who that person is first, and especially when it comes with grooming of younger kids by older people on the internet, it can be pretty dangerous.
I was actually going to bring up social media in terms of how social media plays into this.
Yeah, social media has let people connect with other people without revealing their true self. People can kind of hide behind social media and technology, and you often don't really know who the person really is until it's too late and you're with them or you're in an unsafe situation or an unsafe place. So it can be pretty dangerous with social media.
So do you think it's different meeting somebody in an impersonal way versus a personal way when it comes to hookup culture?
Yeah, when we talk about safety, I think it's more safe to like meet a person for a cup of coffee somewhere and really talk about who they are rather than just saying like, let's meet in a parking lot and let's hook up and that'll be it. Because the latter is pretty unsafe.
Yeah. And what do you think about this, Whitley? And listening to two of them talk about this, I saw you nodding your head a lot when Eunice was talking about being an Asian woman and what goes on for women with men. What's your feeling about that?
Yeah, I definitely can connect with the being a woman part and it just feeling dangerous a lot because you never, especially with social media, you never really know who you're talking to unless like you already know them in person and you're like sure that it's actually their account. Like it can be really dangerous. But I mean, if you can figure out how to do it safely and make sure you know the person, meet them in like not like a crowded area, but an area with people where if you need to like call out for help or get away easily where you can't just, be taken or whatever, that's better.
How do we protect kids in school from this? It can be a dangerous slope. How do we protect kids who are younger now with the internet, and how do we protect them from not getting hurt from the hookup culture?
I don't think there's really one certain way that you can completely protect every kid, but I think actually giving us an education on it would be better, just making sure that every kid knows, whether it's just like we go out in the lecture hall and someone talks to us about it, or even if there's like a mini class or something, as long as an administrative person comes in and talks to us and is like, hey, X, Y, and Z isn't safe, we actually get some sex ed, because I know, like, I don't think I've ever gotten any in my school. We had in middle school we had like
Wow.
a 1 hour quick little, but that was more just about our bodies changing. That wasn't even sex ed.
Wow. That's amazing. Eunice, do you agree with that? I'll ask both you two, Chris, but first Eunice, has that been your experience too? That there has not
Yeah,
been
there's
education?
definitely been a lack of sex education in my school years. I don't think I ever received a solid sex education. In college, I kind of had to teach everything myself as well, and I was lucky enough to be surrounded with older siblings who are willing to talk about it with me and get me through it. And I also just think parents, a lot of parents are afraid to talk about sex with their kids,
I'm so glad you
and they
brought that
really
up.
shouldn't be, because that's a great way to teach them the proper way to have sex, or the proper way to avoid having it when they don't want it.
I was thinking the same thing. I don't. My father claims he talked to me about sex, but I don't remember. I think I had to learn it all on my own, actually.
Yeah.
How about you, Chris? Sex education. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, sex has been stigmatized pretty heavily across the world, but especially in the United States. The United States lacks sex education pretty seriously when compared to other countries.
Well,
And I can speak in personal experience. I have received very minimal sex education, and when I have, it seems very out of touch. It's taught by people that don't really know what they're talking about or who they're talking to, and even the way that it's approached, it's very like hush, and it kind of reinforces the message that you really shouldn't be talking about sex with anybody, any adults. But education is the only way to really enforce safety when it comes to this kind of things. Parents need to educate, kids need to educate, siblings need to educate younger siblings. It's really I think the most efficient way to really protect kids.
how do we prevent the internet from having social media from having a negative effect? What do we do about that?
I think it's unfortunate, but it's kind of already too late. It has a really tough and firm grasp on a lot of people, so it's kind of tough to combat the internet, but you can kind of prevent people and educate people as to the dangers. But I think, unfortunately, there will always be shady people using the internet for shady things, and you just kind of have to educate children to be on the lookout for that.
So, what's the positive effect of casual sex? By the way, in my era, I'm sure it was happening, but it seems much more. Hookup culture seems much more acceptable now. Sex is more acceptable. And the other thing is, our generation doesn't have a great track record. Divorce right now is over 50%, and God knows how many more people would be divorced if there weren't other reasons that keep them together. So, what is it? I mean, is there a positive side to hookup culture and casual sex?
Yeah, I think you named it. It's just it breaks down that wall regarding sex. There's not that much positive, but if it can establish a healthy relationship and it's unharmful between two people, it can kind of help break down the stigma about sex.
As long as two people somebody doesn't get hurt and doesn't get. What happens if somebody gets emotionally involved and the other one's not? Then it's
Right.
dangerous.
Yeah, there's a lot of danger with hookup culture. I think it probably does more damage right now for children than it does
And why more damage?
help. Just because of the danger, the possibilities of danger. There's so many cases of sexual assault right now and rape right now, and a lot of them stem from just the idea that casual sex is just okay and should be something that you should strive for, and like kind of something that is cool and people feel pressured to do.
Looking for love and validation, right? That's a big theme on our shows, right? That sometimes you just look for love in all the wrong places.
Mhm.
Right. So, what about you, Whitley? Can hookup culture be a good thing? You see positive with your friends? Do you see
Yeah.
positive?
I
What
mean,
kind of things do you see from that in your friendships?
yeah, I mean, I definitely think that if that's what makes someone happy, if that's what they want to do and what they're comfortable with, as long as it's consensual on both sides. And I think it's really important to talk, even though these conversations are always super awkward, just make sure that both parties are on the same page first. that way it's less likely that people get their feelings hurt or emotionally involved or whatever early on. I think that that's always smart to do. That way, one person isn't going into it thinking something different than the other person. I think that that's a good way to make it more healthy and for it to be more positive. Because, I mean, if that's what makes you happy, if that's something that you're interested in and you feel is good for you, then, I mean, and it's consensual and everyone's safe, like, I'm all for it.
How about you, Eunice? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely there are positive outcomes to hookup culture. One of it being just getting to know your body more through personal experience. And like Chris said, getting rid of the stigma around sex. And yeah.
But because being pansexual, like, you're very free and open to experience all different kinds of people, right? So
Yeah.
uh, it, for you, I would think that you're very open to exploring your body and sex, and it doesn't feel like I might as well start with you that there's as much of a rush to get married. When we were younger, with people getting married right after college, doesn't seem to be the drive and need to get committed as quickly to a whole life experience.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think this generation, um, specifically like the Gen Z generation, they have not been focused on marriage or kids whatsoever, not as much as our parents have been. And yeah, I'm not sure why, but honestly, good for us.
Would you, Shaggy, you agree with that, Whitley? You feel the same way?
I mean, well, first of all, we're all, well, not all. I mean, I'm actually, I don't know where I am on the Gen Z scale. I think I'm somewhere in the middle, but like, I'm 16. I'm young. I don't need to be thinking about getting married right now.
Yeah.
But it's.
Have you had a boyfriend? You had a boyfriend, Whitley?
I have a boyfriend right now.
Oh, you have a boyfriend.
Yeah.
I didn't even know
Yeah.
that for all of us. None of us knew that you had a boyfriend.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's been a little over a month. It's been over a month.
How is it? How's it going?
But, it's going pretty well.
How'd you meet this guy?
We go to the same school. We actually met at prom.
Well, that's nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, hook up for you. You like having a boyfriend, I'm sure, right?
I do enjoy having a boyfriend.
But in terms of, do you think after watching what's happened in our generation, do you think there isn't the same kind of idea about settling down quickly?
I mean, I don't think a lot of us feel as much of the need to because, I mean, marriage is kind of a social construct in its own. I know I've talked to a couple of my friends, and it's just kind of like, why do I need a piece of paper to say that I love this person and I'm committed to them for the rest of my life?
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing like marriages around us, some just like the divorce rate is over 50%. And so it's like,
right.
Why would you go into it unsure, especially since we're young, I guess? I mean, this is just from me talking to people around me. This is just kind of the consensus that I've heard.
So being a woman, the danger of hookup culture, I think one of the risks, and Eunice, I'm going to ask you about this too, and Chris, even though you're not on the female side of this, I'm sure you have an opinion on this, is that a disease, pregnancy,
right?
Isn't that a danger in the hookup culture?
No, it definitely is. It definitely is. And it's smart to ask anyone before you like have sex or anything, like if they've gotten tested for STDs or anything recently, just to make sure that you're safe and have a conversation about it. You know, communication is really important. I've always really valued communication. And even though it's awkward, communication itself is always awkward, but it's good to get that out of the way. That way you can go in knowing that everything's okay. And then with pregnancy, there's always always a risk. Well, in like a male-female relationship, there's a risk. And so you've got to be careful and like think it through and like kind of make a plan. Oh, if I got pregnant, like what would happen? Like what would you be comfortable with, thinking through like just your options, I guess.
How about you, Eunice? You have something to say about this?
Yeah, pregnancy is always a risk. So are the diseases, and it doesn't mean that you don't have to have sex just because you might possibly get pregnant or because you might possibly get diseases. There are definitely ways around it, such as Whitley said, asking people if they've gotten tested, and if they have, then ask them what the results are. And you are, I mean, obligated to the results, because once they have that sexual connection with you. And also, I think, honestly, I think we've gotten better in terms of avoiding teen pregnancy, because just science evolving so quickly with so many different types of birth controls, which is also another thing that sex education should also add, which is birth controls and options of birth control, because a lot of girls out there actually don't know what their options are. We have birth controls, getting like the male can get a vasectomy. Obviously, that's more above like being a teenager, but it is an option. And also, I believe it is part of the law now that girls who are under 18 can see a doctor without having to tell their parents about like whether they're pregnant or not.
Except if you're in the heat of passion and the oxytocins are going, is it the risk that maybe you're not thinking about that?
That is true. There is that possibility. The way to avoid that is to just prepare yourself beforehand. Know what you want beforehand. Know what your boundaries are. Being a teenager, it's probably hard to know what your boundaries are, and that's probably the reason why you're in hookup culture in the first place, to figure that out. But you know, you got to have some basic rules for yourself, before doing anything.
So, Chris, the male point of view on this?
Yeah,
The
I
male
think
point of view.
STDs and STIs are definitely a risk. Pregnancy is definitely a risk. But I feel like the more prevalent risks with hookup culture when it comes to women is the mental and physical trauma that can come from it. Assault there's crazy high rates right now. It's something that really isn't talked about, that is pretty normalized within our generation. Not receiving consent or coercing for consent. All these things are really big possibilities and happen a lot with casual sex. So I feel like that's really where the danger lies with women.
What's
kids
going?
need. Do you think kids need signed consent? Like, couldn't someone make like an app, like a consent app? Like, wouldn't that be a cool addition? Because I always find like, hey guys, I always find like the consent issue is the challenging one, because were they drunk? Did they know what they were doing? Did they change their mind? Did they or what? Or did they I mean, I've heard stories of lots of problems happening, but it seems like some sort of consent app, or it's because like you're saying, you don't want to put on the brakes. It's in the heat of passion. But I don't know, just those are my thoughts. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that could be a good idea, an app. Unfortunately, I feel like a signature doesn't really tell the full picture, because a lot can happen behind a signature. Coercion is sexual assault, and that's when it happens a lot. So if you're under the influence, you can't consent. So there's a lot of issues, and I think really it's been like normalized of situations where there have not been two consenting parties. I think the best way to go about it is really if you and the person that you want to engage in
Communication
intercourse with
have-
are really on the same page with communication. There should never be a situation where somebody is like, I did not feel good about that. If you're being open about everything and you're talking it through, you should be in a pretty good place.
What I want to ask you about is, how is it being abused in the schools? I think we've had side conversations over the years about that, where how is it being used in the school in terms of even women being coerced and all kinds of things, and social media? Kids are just doing all kinds of things basically in terms of either flirtations or attempts at hooking up, or maybe even bullying, on sexting in a way where it creates an uneven way for people to get together, but they're even bullied. I heard some story, for instance, about some senior guy offered to do a girl's paper if she sent him nude pictures. And I'm concerned about some of that kind of stuff, that's a different kind of hookup, because they're then being forced even in that way to be coerced into a hookup of some sort.
Yeah.
Do you see that? Do you see that?
Yeah, definitely. Sexual encounters, whether it's sending explicit images or actually meeting up and having sex or
Yeah.
whatever it is so prevalent in high
Yeah.
school, and it trickles down through the grades. And younger grades see the upperclassmen doing this, and they think that this is something they need to do
Yeah.
to kind of feel validated and kind of become a status quo. And it just keeps getting younger and younger. And that's
then
why
how
you have freshmen who are dealing with seniors, and the freshmen don't know what they're doing, and the seniors are grooming these individuals into thinking that's something okay, and they're benefiting from it. And then these freshmen have to grow up with the trauma that comes from that.
So how does that play into hookup culture? That seems like an uneven game.
Yeah, it's because I think in part because how normal hookup culture is, that people think that's something they need to do to feel validated and get the high school experience.
Rather having a mutual agreement that we're doing it and let's do it together and have some fun, but have an understanding that this is just something that we're going to enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Whitley, you find that in the schools, in your school in North Carolina?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there's always been freshmen that have dated seniors. I mean, every year that I've been in high school, there have been a couple. And I mean, some don't seem as like predatory, I guess. That doesn't mean they aren't, obviously, but some you look at them and you're just like, not just necessarily in my school, but in like the surrounding area too. Some you just look at and you're like, that one seems really like sketchy, I guess.
Yeah.
And it really does trickle down, like Chris said. Like, these kids are getting younger and younger, and like they're really like they're growing up so much faster, like every year, just with what they're being exposed to and what they think they're supposed to be doing, what they think is cool.
A lot of it has the FOMO thing, like I'm fear of missing out, right? I worry, but that's one of the things that creates this tension or this pressure. Like if they're doing it, I should do it, rather than being natural. Yeah, Eunice, I want to that's what I'm trying to understand. I'm all for oxytocin. I've talked about oxytocin on this show before. I certainly can relate to oxytocin, but I was just thinking, like, how do you separate? I'm worried about younger girls for sure, but I'm also thinking, like, how do you separate mind and body? I mean, can you really just have physical sex and just enjoy touching at a young age and not? How do you do that and handle that without letting the mind and the emotions get involved in that? And be so casual and so relaxed about that.
That's tough, especially when you're a teenager. You don't really know the difference between the two.
Right. And parents aren't taught, and if parents aren't educating and schools aren't educating, we're really in trouble, right?
Yeah, but
yeah.
Well, like, to any teenager out there, I just would want to tell them that it is possible to separate the two. I personally do.
I want to know how you do that, Eunice.
It's just your bodily needs and your emotional needs can be different. They can be the same, but they can be different. And you can separate the two when you look at it that way. When you are looking into, getting into hookup culture and getting more sexual experience, what exactly are you doing it for? It's a good thing to ask yourself. Who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for yourself? Are you doing it for validation? I think asking those very basic questions. Teenagers are very smart. They become smarter every year. As the younger they are, I feel like they're just getting so much smarter. And so I definitely think that they have the potential to just ask themselves these questions and to think about it and to answer it for themselves honestly. And those questions would be, who are you doing it for, and what are you doing it for?
Being open with the person that you're doing it with.
Yeah, and being open about it too.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think about what Eunice just said?
Yeah, it's a really tough thing to separate those two, especially in high school at a young age. It takes a lot.
And you're a sensitive guy, and I know guys are accused of just thinking with their penises, and that's all they're interested in. So.
Right, and I mean, there certainly is that. There's definitely people that are just purely sexually motivated and haven't realized that there are also emotional needs that come with themselves and other people. And it takes emotional maturity, and it's a thing that people usually grow into in college or even in their 20s. They kind of it kind of clicks for them. So it's really tough to throw a teenager in there and be like, yeah, don't get hurt. Like, here, separate your physical emotions from your mental emotions.
And I think you've learned that, because I think for a while you haven't had so many committed relationships until the one you're in now, right? I mean, what got you ready to have a mature relationship, high school relationship?
I think it was just kind of the right person, right time. I think you'll kind of find your person, and they kind of help you grow. And definitely for me, my girlfriend helped me grow my mental maturity, kind of showed me what a healthy relationship looks like.
For those of you that did not see the show, and I've been actually meaning to ask you this question, I don't think I asked it on the last show, is that TikTok image of the two of you that got a million viewers, right? When you did that, and obviously you were enjoying it, it was a position that you felt comfortable doing. What was your hope in sharing that with the world in terms of, because obviously the world felt they were missing something and they liked watching it. So what was that?
I gotta say, there wasn't a huge amount of thought that went behind that post. I kind of just put it out there, and it got pretty big, but I wasn't really thinking about it.
So what do you and your girlfriend think of that reaction to that TikTok position?
We thought it was pretty funny. That was before we committed to a relationship, so we were just friends at that point, and we thought it was just pretty funny that it blew up.
That's all there was to it for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll keep moving on. Chris, if I don't get all the questions out and I'm missing something, seeing that you had ideas for the show, please call me out on it. Okay, I'll jump in.
Totally.
Right? I think I mentioned on another show that pornography. You talk about how we're not talking enough about sex. Now we've really gone to the extreme in 2 New York City private schools. New York Times wrote about this. Pornography now is being taught. The parents were up in arms about it, but they were actually teaching it as a course to elicit, loose and free discussion about sex and, I guess, all kinds of positions and all kinds of sensations and how it all feels. What do you think about that, Eunice?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there are a lot of teenagers who watch pornography. No shame in that at all. But if it is their only source of sex and sex education, then that's a big problem. So I definitely think it was good for them to have that course. What was the course called?
Excuse me?
What was the course called? It was just about.
I don't know. I think it was. I don't really know the exact. It was about.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember what the name.
But they did talk about it in.
Did you know about that? Had you heard about that?
No, I haven't actually. No.
Yeah. So you think it's a good thing? The teacher got a lot of help for that. Parents.
Yeah, I think so. Especially if you're like, okay, see, like if you kind of go through like the titles. A lot of the titles are kind of predatory, talking about teenage girl loses her virginity and something like that. And if you just talk about that and teach that is not the right thing to do, and that is not what sex is about, then I feel like that would already change the game when it comes to sex and sex education in teenagers.
So if you were teaching the pornography class, how would you teach it?
Well, first of all, I would highlight that it's okay if you watch porn or not. I feel like a lot of kids are ashamed about watching pornography, and I feel like kids go to pornography because they have no one else to talk about sex with. And I would probably also highlight that a lot of these videos being published are not exactly people who the makers of the videos are not there to educate you. They are there to entertain you. It is not education, it is entertainment. That's what pornography is. So yeah, I would highlight that as well.
Whitley, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I read up a little bit on it, and I know there are a lot of instances where videos are like published and not everyone in there is consenting and stuff. So I think that can be very dangerous. And also that a lot of the videos are just very like harmful to women, just how like the women are portrayed and how you're supposed to see them. It's not great, but I don't I mean, as long as you make sure that, like, I guess that everyone in the video is like consenting or whatever. I don't think it's
How do you
bad to
feel? How do you
watch.
feel they're portraying women in a bad way? What do you think they're doing?
Kind of more treating women just like objects, or just they're just there to be used. Not as much as like a person, which isn't great.
Chris, what do you think of this conversation being a guy over there?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of problems with the porn industry. I think it's pretty problematic, and I think it's unfortunately how a lot of children are introduced to sex, and it's like it's not education. It's a poor image of what a healthy sexual relationship should be.
Do we need like teen
women?
So
Women
Mike is asking, do we need teen-focused porn? I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, like more appropriate that are more, like the kids are saying, it's not really modeling appropriate behavior. So should there be more porn out there that is appropriate and showing what real relationships are about, but seeing the under the covers view of it?
Yeah, I think that goes hand in hand with just sex education, just really showing what healthy sex
So-
looks like.
We keep coming back. I'm sure the parents that are watching the show are like nervous wrecks listening to you talk about all this. I happen to know a few that have. I've had a dinner conversation recently with a father who is really concerned about his high school daughter and being in this hookup culture mentality of just kind of having casual sex for physical pleasure and just kind of just feeling free and loose and fancy and not really worrying about whether it's a mature relationship, and just it is a freer time with more choices. So how do we make these parents that are watching this show feel better about raising their kids, and particularly daughters, I would think in this case? What would
Can I
be?
take this one, Doctor?
Yes, you can, Chris.
Yeah, just educate your kids. Make
Back to
sex
that.
something that they can
Talk to your
feel
kids.
comfortable
Talk to your
coming
kids
to
about
and talk
sex.
about. Exactly. Make that conversation something that they can say to you. You want your kids to be able to come to you and talk to you about any problems they're having or anything that's going on in their sex life. It's really dangerous when kids feel like they can't talk to their parents,
And
and
can
the
a
parents
father,
get left out of the loop.
and by the way, can a father talk to a daughter? We often would think that it's the mother that has to talk to the daughter. Can a father talk to the daughter?
No, that's a stigma, of course. That just keeps pushing the whole idea that you can't talk about sex.
Yeah, you two feel the same way that a father or mother would be good. It doesn't have to be mom. It's always thought of that the mom has to talk to the daughter. I always think it's sad, by the way. I have a daughter. I think it's sad that we're living in a time now, like we're getting a little bit off the hookup culture thing, although it's all one, in my opinion. When a daughter feels after a certain point in their development that they can't sit on their father's lap or hug their father, and I think what's nice about the hookup culture, if we want to look at the positive side of it, is I think it's nice to feel relaxed about touching and sex, and not to live in a society where we're so afraid of sex and exploration, and that's probably the positive side of all this, right? To not treat it as some kind of taboo, even though it has its danger points. As a matter of fact, there's an article. This is amazing. Every time I do a show, the New York Times has been very good to me. And on Sunday, there was an article about when a hookup lasts 12 years, time to reassess. It came out Sunday. I said, my God, the New York Times know they're going to be doing these shows on Kids Are Talking, and
I've been leaking it to them.
Mike's been leaking it to them. But I'll tell you what's amazing about this article. This is really fascinating, this article, because two people were just starting to decide to have hookup, be casual with each other, and they got to be best friends and be free and easy, but they didn't see it as any kind of future thing, and they figured, we'll just hang out together and have a summer romance. And apparently went well, and then they went off and had different relationships, different boyfriends, different girlfriends. And then in the end, they found each other later on and decided that maybe they had something pretty good in their hookup relationship, that maybe there was something there that was special and different than what they thought after dating and having boyfriends and girlfriends. The articles about they started to reassess that maybe we're not just a hookup, maybe we're the real deal. I thought that was sort of an interesting perspective. What do you all think about that? Anybody want to jump in? Who's going to jump in on that one? Chris, want to jump in? Go ahead, jump in.
Okay, yeah.
Chris didn't talk fast enough.
Yeah, sure. I can definitely contribute to this one because I kind of started off the same way. I have a similar experience.
Yes. Is it that relationship that you talked about on the last show?
To be honest, I can't remember.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
We
glad
talked
you're
about a
talking.
lot, doctor,
Go ahead.
but yeah.
Go ahead. Talk about it. Go ahead. Let's see.
Yeah, so when I started off college here, I went to 2 different colleges. When I started off with my second college, I kind of went into that sexual exploration stage, and I did go through like a hookup phase. And then I met this person, and it started off as a hookup, but we ended up being really close friends. We started scheduling our classes together, and to this day we still are the closest of friends,
Mm.
along with the hookup sex part, and we've been doing it for about 1.5 years now.
You know, this is. I want you to know this is actually the thing I wanted you to talk about today. You talked about this on the other show, actually.
I think so, but
Yeah. Go ahead.
we've been going on for 1.5 years, and even through COVID we still
Mm.
talked. Like, there was no sexual interaction, of course, because COVID, but we still stayed in touch, and you can definitely tell that the way we communicate is not meant like we're not looking to be in a relationship, and it's definitely not going to go there. And it's probably going to stay like that for the rest of my time in college, or maybe even for longer. And so I definitely relate to that article, and it's definitely possible.
So when you say you relate to the article, you mean you think that could happen between you and I assume that this is a female.
It is not
It's
actually.
not. Who is it? Who is it? Can I ask?
Yeah, it is. It's a male. Yeah.
It's a male. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are you? What is it about the article that you can relate to? Because you're saying they actually were thinking about in the reassessment of becoming boyfriend and girlfriend. You're not.
Yeah.
not
I don't think me and my friend are at that stage yet, but neither of us are opposed to that because we have talked about it.
okay.
And we're opposed to it now, but who knows what could happen in the coming years. And we both said the same thing.
Okay.
But
We have
yeah,
a question in the chat
who
room.
knows?
We got a question in the chat room. Okay, go ahead. What is it? Oh, do you think kids will regret hookups when they get older and develop a serious relationship?
Personally, I don't. Now, I haven't really had the experience with it, but if I had, like, I don't think I would regret it, like, because unless it like was harder to get into a relationship because of that. Since I live in a small town, like if you ask around about a person, you get a pretty like detailed explanation because everybody knows everybody like really well. So like if you go around asking about someone you're interested in, usually you'll get told like, oh, well, they are only really into hookups, or oh, they're only into like serious relationships, or oh, they just got out of like a really, really long relationship. Like, so if you're into like more casual things and then it turns out you want to get into a serious relationship, I think that that's where there can be a problem if you live in a smaller place like I do, at least, because going into it, people have different expectations for what they think it is than you.
Well, so I don't want that question to interrupt. What we were starting to talk, because in your situation, you're talking about it doesn't sound like you would have a regret because you've been through two rounds with this guy, right? So, and it sounds to me like you would not have a regret if, well, it's not a hookup relationship anymore, right? It's now a relationship. Am I right?
Oh, like a boyfriend girlfriend
Well, he's
relationship?
not a boyfriend, but like the article.
Oh, but it is like a form of relationship, yes. But
But
it
it didn't start off that way. It
Yeah.
didn't start. That's what you related to in the article, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm saying if something were to happen, I think different from what Whitley's saying, right? It's a different kind of situation. You would not have a regret. It sounds like whatever's happening with this guy, it's going to be meaningful at this point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And there could be a future with the two of you. Is that what you're relating to in the article?
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
So there would be no regret for you,
No.
right? That's kind of nice, Eunice. Back to that story. So, in your being pansexual, are you monogamous with each other or not?
No.
No. And there's a total respect and understanding that it's not possessive, that you can
Yeah,
experience.
to be honest, we even talk about other people that we have interacted with and have talked to. Yeah.
Have had sex with other people as well,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's okay.
Yeah.
So, Chris, what do you think? I guess there's two things going on. One is the chat room question, and also what Eunice has been talking about, and how Whitley responded to the chat room question. So maybe we got both things going on right now at the same time.
Yeah, well, I'll start off with Eunice. That's that's great to hear. That's the kind of like healthy relationship that children kind of need to be taught. Like that is a really good thing, and that's not like shown in like the porn industry or sex ed right now. Just to kind of bring back to our last conversation. But with the question from the chat,
before you move on from that,
yeah.
what do you like specifically about what Eunice is saying about that relationship now?
Well, it's two people who have sexual encounters with each other, but they're honest with what they want out of it, and they communicate well, and they can communicate so well they can talk about their other partners outside of that relationship. And
right.
I think
it's not possessive.
From what I hear, it's healthy, and everybody's feelings are considered, and it's a really solid relationship.
And what do you think about that article? Before we get to the second question, did you think that article about two people hooking up and then reassessing, and similar to, I guess, similar to your situation, right? That's what you related to in the article, right? That it could turn into more.
Yep.
Not necessarily marriage, but boyfriend, girlfriend, or a different level of relationship.
Yeah, relationships are ever changing. So whatever happens down the road just happens, and you reassess.
And what about the chat room question?
I think there's definitely the possibility of people regretting things they do, but I don't think that's any reason to not explore or
take a risk, right? You try it out, right?
Yeah.
You got to know what you're getting into, right, Chris?
Right. I think if you are healthy and smart about what you're doing, then there's no reason why you shouldn't. I think people regret not doing things more than people regret doing things.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
What do you think about that, Mike?
I think that's like a Walt Whitman quote.
Oh, really?
Spend more of your life regretting the things that you didn't do than regretting things that you did do.
Yeah, so it's like we're here to learn and grow, right? Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. As long as if we do get hurt, we have a place to talk about it and people that care and want to respect and hear what you have to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty impressive, Eunice. Do you think there's a difference in the pansexual LGBTQ community in terms of relationships than the cisgender community? I mean...
Oh, absolutely.
So is this the difference right now with what you're talking about?
Yeah, hookup culture in itself is so heteronormative, and it is, everything revolves around it. The default is a heterosexual relationship, and since there's a lack of education in sex when it comes to hetero relationships, imagine the lack of education when it comes to LGBTQ relationships.
Yeah.
It's a different field for sure.
Can you tell us a little bit? I think people would be interested because people are always curious and confused. What do you think the difference is in your community versus the cisgender community?
Yeah, I think one example is if someone was a trans teenager and they wanted to explore more when it comes to sexual relationships, it is going to be really hard for them to even find a person because, first of all, they have to tell that person. I mean, they shouldn't have to, but a lot of them feel required to tell the person that they are trans, even though that information isn't required to be revealed. And once that person finds out that they are trans, there is no way of knowing whether they will take it well or not. They could hurt them. That is just one example. Another example is when it comes to gay relationships, such as woman-to-woman relationships or men-to-men relationships. Since we are a minority, a lot of us will not have any sexual experiences even up to college. I know a lot of people and a lot of my friends who are queer and part of the community who have not had sex and have had zero sexual education. And the only way they were able to receive their education is through social media. And we all know that social media can be very terrible to go to when it comes to sex education. So, yeah.
So how did you break out of this? It seems like you've done very well with all these different pieces. How did you figure it out?
I had to live and learn. I had to go through very traumatic experiences with people. I wouldn't call it regrets, but of course I would have preferred to not have that happen. But I have matured and grown since I got to college, and it is really sad that that is the only way that I've learned is through trauma. But it's that way for a lot of kids part of the LGBTQ community.
What was the trauma? If you can just briefly tell us what was the most traumatic part of your journey to get to where you were.
Yeah, I think specifically with men, just like finding out that I am queer and have been with people who are queer, they they don't like that, and there have been times where they kind of get, I wouldn't say abusive, but they do become very aggressive when it comes to that. And a lot of the times they think, oh, you're attracted to men and women, we should have a threesome. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, let's not jump to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a lot of assumptions of my identity and my sexual experiences. They think my boundaries are non-existent just because I am gay and because I prefer more than one gender.
What makes this guy you're with now, is he pansexual or is he not pansexual?
He's not. He's actually a cis straight man.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that our generation has been very educated when it comes to queer relationships. So finding out that I was queer, it wasn't like a big deal to him. And hopefully, as
Nice.
we go along the generations, it continues and to be that way, and it gets better.
That's hopeful. Chris, what do you think about this conversation? We've talked
Yeah.
about it, and you consider yourself non-binary, right? You're non-binary or not non-binary?
No,
You're cisgender, but you're cisgender, but you certainly have an openness to this kind of thing. What do you think about what Eunice is saying?
Yeah, it's really refreshing hearing about healthy relationships. It kind of gives me hope for a lot of people, because I know there's people that really struggle with that, and I'm sure you struggled with that too.
Yeah.
But it's hopeful.
I know that what I meant by non-binary, I think in the last show, I mean, I know you're in a straight relationship, you're in a cisgender relationship, but I think you define that you can be open to the non-binary way of thinking, right?
Right. There's plenty of
Right,
things that I do that are non-binary.
That's what I meant. That's
Yeah.
what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm cisgendered and I'm heterosexual, but there's plenty of things that I like to do that are, non-binary, and I think breaking down the binary walls is a good thing to do. It's something I kind of strive to do.
Is there anything in tonight's show that you would else have wanted to bring up, because this show was something very important to you, but would you say we've covered the things that you felt were important to cover tonight?
No, I think we covered a lot, and we kind of segmented pretty well to different topics.
Whitley, what's your reaction to Eunice's what she was sharing? Pretty amazing. Huh?
Yeah. First of all, I'm sorry that you had to go through that stuff. I know it sucks, but I'm glad that at least it seems right now that the relationship, or whatever you want to define it as, that's going well. And I'm glad that it's healthy and everything, because that's really good.
Thank you.
So,
you're welcome.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing and so beautiful and positive and encouraging. So let's do what we always do at the end of the show on Kids Are Talking. Let's each one of you let the audience know what they should take from tonight's show that would be helpful, it was helpful for you and helpful for them. So we'll start with you, Whitley.
First of all, to all the parents, don't be afraid to talk to your kids about it. Whether or not you talk to them about sex, that's not really going to affect whether or not they have it. It just is more whether or not how safe they're going to be with it. So just educate your kids. We need our kids to be educated. Just always make sure everything's safe and obviously consensual. Always check. And really do what makes you happy. Don't listen to social norms. They change all the time.
Right.
So yeah, just
Great.
do what's right for you.
Great message. Thanks. And Eunice?
Yeah, also a message to the parents, I guess. But I mean, if you're afraid to talk about it with your kid, imagine how afraid your child is going into that field with no knowledge whatsoever. And also, I just want parents out there to consider that maybe your teenager is not straight, not cisgender, Whether you like it or not, that might be a possibility, and that should play into how you educate sex to your kids.
And be open-minded
Yes,
and not judgmental.
yes, for sure.
Chris?
Yeah, taboo topics only cause damage down the road. Break down those walls and just normalize talking about sex, and it will help for a safer community for your kids and for others.
And I'm going to do something that we don't always do, Mike. I think we're going to pitch in and give our own take home from tonight. I'm going to go first.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I'm in private practice 43 years. I've seen a lot of things. The danger of creating an environment with your child at home that you cannot, that it's not open, and you think you're controlling them and keeping them down. If you hold them down too much, you better look out when they go to college. Because what I have seen is when you repress and control and tell your kid they can't do it, they may toe the line when they're home, but they're going to rebel big time when they get back. When they get to college, anything you try to do to repress them and control them instead of having a free and easy conversation with them is going to come back at you. So any parent that's listening to the show tonight, I think you ought to listen to these kids, because it's going to prevent a lot of problems with your children as they get older. That's my message tonight.
Okay.
Mike?
Yeah, well, my thought was, just listening to the kids talk about, just how a lot of relationships are modeled or influenced by the porn industry. And I think if you look hard enough, you can find good, if that's what you want to do and you want to learn that way. I think there's lots of great videos out there, and there's things that you can learn if you just, really know where to look and understand. Just like when you watch a movie, a regular movie, an action movie, that, Superman can't really leap over tall buildings in a single bound. Just like in a lot of these porn movies, that's not how real relationships work. That's just a fantasy that someone made up. So that's my 2 cents, I guess.
And Chris, I want to thank you for having the motivation and the drive to introduce the show tonight. The three of you were amazing. You've been amazing on every show you've been in through this first season of Kids Are Talking. The three of you make me proud, and ought to make everybody that's watching the three of you proud, and great educators for the kids in America, out of America, adults, the same thing. And thank you so much. Please stay in the back room so we can have a little more discussion when the show is over. And all I can say is we now know the hookup culture is a complex conversation, and we ought to really pay more attention to what it means before we think we know what it means.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know half the stuff that the kids were talking about. I think that we're also learning that a lot of these discussions that we're trying to have, these open forum discussions, they branch off, and there's a whole lot of information that we can't cover in an hour. And maybe we can have another discussion down the road about one of these, focus in on one of the topics and really hone in on it and really get to the bottom of the subject matter.
And by the way, the three of you have been a great segue, because next week's show, we're probably going to be doing a 2-part series on mental health. We haven't really done that. Next week, we're going to look at anxiety and depression in America. We all know what's going on with Simone Biles in the Olympics. Yeah. We also know what's been going on with Naomi Osaka. We know that mental health is real. We know this is a complex time. We're going to address that next week and probably the week after in terms of the effects of mental health. So for all of you who are watching tonight, please tune in to next week when we take this discussion and segue it right into the mental health complexity in America right now and what we're struggling with in terms of being able to have a conversation and make that be the norm, as well as hookup culture and everything else we talk about on Kids Are Talking. So I want to say goodnight to all of you and thank you all for listening. And from all of us at Kids Are Talking and Mike, have a really good night.
Have a good night. And if you made it this far, then please like and subscribe to the channel, and you can tune into all of our shows and you'll get reminders. So from here at Kids Are Talking, have a good night.